Now, despite possible gains in the banking and oil and gas stocks, analysts at Vetiva say they expect the challenges in the industrial and consumer goods sectors to temper overall gains. Jesusetuntun Ajagun, portfolio manager at Vetiva Capital Management, joins me to gauge market sentiment for the month of November. JT, thank you so much. Pleasure to have you on the show with us today. Well, the month of November is looking mixed so far, but let's start with where investors are finding value so far. But let's take a few steps back. Where would you say investors found the most value in October? Then we'll tie that to what we're seeing in November. Okay,
perfect. So for the month of October, we saw investors invest in the like of banking stocks and also the oil and gas stocks, right? I mean, the banking sector appreciated by about 4% month to date, and yet to date as of October, it had appreciated by 10%. And the contributors to the rise in the banking sector that we saw in October were the appreciations in Access Corp, GTB. I mean, about 8 stocks out of the 10 stocks in the banking index closed in the green, and we owe all this to, investors seeing value in the banking sector due to the fact that we're currently in an elevated interest rate environment. And what typically happens is that we see banks, record higher interest income. And aside from that, I think one major thing was because investors saw that, the prices were at attractive entry points due to the sell-offs we saw in the month of September. They considered it a very good opportunity for them to get those stocks at that time. So aside from the banking sector, the oil and gas sector as well, we saw Seplat, Oando has always, appreciated Seplat. Also, did very well. I mean, year to date currently, I know Seplat is about 100%. Year to date. So investors really got value from banking stocks and also the oil and gas.
So I'm just looking at the oil and gas index and you're right, led by Oando and Seplat, 15.9% in October. What is your outlook for gains for that sector this month? Do you think that that sector could top or perhaps even outperform October's return?
So for the rest of this month, I think that sector would actually continue to do really well, and that will majorly be driven by appreciation in other stocks as well, like Conor, Eternal. We've seen investors, show affinity towards those stocks and take
because of the gains we're seeing in Oando and Seplat. So just the broader sentiment, lifting the other stocks, right?
The other sectors, yeah.
Right. But when also are investors? I mean, you're a portfolio manager. What are investors' portfolios looking like right now? What stocks are they shying away from at this time? And what stocks are they quite keen on outside of banking and oil and gas stocks?
Okay, so with respect to shying away from, like we've seen investors shy away from consumer goods stocks and also industrial goods. The major reason for industrial goods is because earlier on in the year, we saw that sector actually book quite some heavy gains. And now, basically, we are seeing investors basically just take profits now. And we've seen that happen, consistently for the last 3 months. So we definitely would most likely see the industrial goods sector also close down, driven by the profit-taking activities in BUA Cement and also Danksem. Consumer goods stock as well, I mean, due to the macroeconomic conditions that we're currently in, FX issues, I mean, we've seen a couple of them release their results, and due to the, losses that we've seen them record, we've seen a lot of investors actually, shy away from that sector. However, we still have some investors. I mean, there's still some other stocks. I've seen investors sort of take position in, like, flour mill stock.
I mean, flour mills is a different story entirely.
Yes.
It's different. I mean, if you think about not even the consumer goods, Okomo Oil, what Okomo Oil has been able to do this year with the backward integration, of course, like flour mills also.
Yes.
Do you see this trend continuing? Maybe other, consumer goods industry, for those, I guess, for those who can, look back, look inwards to see how they can supplement, exchange the inputs that are imported for local ones. Do you see that trend? Do you see that continuing?
I mean, there's a possibility we could actually see that happen, because at the end of the day, there's a competition there. So companies would definitely have to try to see how they can, their stocks can actually, perform well, and try to look at what are these people doing and seeing how they can take the positives from there and, apply it into. So there's a possibility, but for now, we might not really see it happen now, but there's a possibility that we might see other companies also possibly toe that part, considering what we've seen with Okomo and also
For the rest of the the rest of November, I mean, what are you expecting? Any major highlights, or just the same? Investors looking for where they can find value, and also how much attention are investors paying to the macro outlook, macro indicators? We had inflation come out. Of course, we saw that surge in headline. We also saw core inflation also increase. There's an MPC meeting next week. Investors, are they paying any attention, or are they just focusing on the individual companies, looking at what those companies are doing, seeing where those companies' strengths are, what they're focusing, and the plans for their future and all of that?
So for the rest of this month, I think one major activity that would, drive the performance of the banking sector, just like you said, is the outcome of the MPC meeting. I mean, inflation actually inched up higher, and there's an expectation that we might see them hike rate, or worst case scenario, they hold rate. But all in all, whatever the outcome of that MPC meeting is what would, determine whether we would see more investors, tilt towards the fixed income, market in search of, higher rates. And I think aside from that, if there's an hike in the rate, I think it also supports, a further, strong points for the banking sector, right? Because we would see investors play more in that space. Then on to your second question, I think investors are actually looking at, the macro side in making the decisions. What's currently happening in the economy, inflation, what space can I, play into? And I think that's where exchange traded funds as well also come into play here, because the thing about it is, as opposed to you selecting your stocks individually, exchange traded funds basically gives investors access to the market by them just investing in a single instrument. So we might most likely see some of them decide to diversify their portfolio by just buying a single instrument that gives them access to the market, or that gives them access to a certain sector that they are interested in, or that they've been able to see that based on the macroeconomic condition, we feel that the sector will do well. I mean, we've mentioned the banking sector, which is hinged on, the elevated interest rate, elevated fixed income rate environment. So I think that's basically it.
All right, so we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, JT, for talking to us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
That market outlook. Jesusetuntun Ajagun, Portfolio Manager at Vetiva Capital Management.